The silence before the storm. When the universe learned to fear. The celestial archive held every secret in the known universe. It floated in the void between galaxies, a massive structure of pure crystallized knowledge. The archivists who maintained it were beings of pure energy, older than most stars. They recorded everything: births of civilizations, deaths of worlds, the rise and fall of empires. They had seen it all. Until the day the Krell arrived. The conquerors of stars. The Krell were gods, or close enough that the difference didn't matter. They stood 15 feet tall, their bodies composed of living metal that shifted and changed with their thoughts. Their eyes glowed with the power of collapsed stars. They had conquered 12 galaxies, enslaved 300 species, and destroyed any civilization that dared resist them. They did not ask for permission. They did not negotiate. They simply took what they wanted, and what they wanted now was the Celestial Archive. Senior Archivist Zeph watched their fleet approach. Millions of ships, each one capable of destroying planets. The Krell formation moved through space like a wave of darkness, blotting out the stars behind them. "We must surrender the archive," said Archivist Val, her energy form flickering with fear. "The Krell cannot be stopped. No one has ever defeated them." Zeph's ancient consciousness processed this. It was true. The Krell had crushed the Valdari Empire in a single day. They had broken the hive mind of Theron without effort. They had made the synthetic collective kneel. But Zeph had been studying something interesting in the archive recently. A relatively new entry. A small species from an unremarkable yellow star. A species that called themselves humans. The strange data. "Wait," Zeph said. "There is one species the Krell have not yet encountered." "Which one?" Vel asked. "They call their world Earth. They have been spacefaring for less than 400 years. By galactic standards, they are infants. Then how could they help us? The Krell would crush them instantly." Zeph pulled up the human files. What he saw there disturbed him more than the approaching Krell fleet. The humans had a history unlike any species he had ever documented. They had spent 100,000 years on their home world, and 90,000 of those years had been spent fighting each other. The records were horrifying. Humans had developed thousands of ways to kill their own kind. They had created weapons that could end all life on their planet. They had fought wars that killed millions. They had invented torture devices that served no purpose except to cause maximum suffering. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was that they had survived it all. They had looked at the edge of extinction, at the weapons they created, at the darkness in their own hearts, and they had chosen to keep going. They had formed alliances, built civilizations, reached for the stars. And they had never stopped preparing for war. The protocol. "I need to contact Earth," Zeph said. "That will take too long. The Krell will be here in 72 hours. Then I suggest we move quickly." The transmission reached Earth Defense Command 3 hours later. Admiral Chen received it in her office, deep beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. She read the message twice, then called an emergency meeting. "The Celestial Archive is under attack," she told the assembled commanders. "They're asking for our help." General Rodriguez leaned forward. "Against who?" "The Krell. They're a civilization that has conquered 12 galaxies." Silence filled the room. "How many ships do they have?" asked Fleet Commander Park. "According to the archive, several million." More silence. "And they want us to fight them?" Rodriguez's voice was careful, controlled. "Not exactly." Chen pulled up the full message. "They want us to activate Protocol Nightmare." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Protocol Nightmare was not a military designation. It was not an official strategy. It existed in files that were buried so deep, most governments denied it existed at all. It was the plan for what humanity would do if they ever encountered something they absolutely could not allow to exist. The decision. "We can't," said Park. "Protocol Nightmare is genocide." It's everything we swore we would never become. The Krell have enslaved 300 species, Chen replied. They don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They consume entire civilizations. So we become them? We use the methods our ancestors created when they were trying to destroy each other? Admiral Chen stood. She was old, with gray hair and tired eyes. She had served in humanity's military for 60 years. She had seen what humans were capable of when pushed to their limits. The protocol exists for a reason, she said quietly. Our ancestors learned something important during those 100,000 years of war. They learned that sometimes, to stop a monster, you have to become something worse. Something so terrible that the monster runs. And you think the Krell will run? No, Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. I think they'll break. The deployment. 12 hours later, a single ship left Earth orbit. It was small, barely visible against the backdrop of space. It carried no weapons, no shields, no impressive technology. It carried only people. 300 of them. They were not soldiers in the traditional sense. They wore no uniforms. They carried no flags. They had no official names or ranks that appeared in any database. They were specialists. Experts. The descendants of warriors who had fought in shadows and silence for thousands of years. Each one had been trained since childhood in arts that most civilized species had never imagined. Colonel Sarah Vance stood in the cargo bay, addressing her team. She was 45 years old, with scars covering most of her visible skin. Her eyes were calm and empty, the eyes of someone who had seen too much and felt too little. The Krell think they're gods, she said. They think they're invincible because they've never lost. They think fear is something they create, not something they experience. She walked among her team. Quiet men and women who watched her with the same empty eyes. We're going to teach them differently. We're going to show them what humanity learned in 100,000 years of killing each other. We're going to demonstrate that fear is not about power or size or strength. She stopped, looking at each face in turn. Fear is about uncertainty. About knowing that something is hunting you and being unable to stop it. About watching your allies die and knowing you're next. About understanding that you are not the predator anymore. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The Krell have never been prey before. By the time we're done, they'll wish they still had that innocence. The arrival. The human ship arrived at the Celestial Archive 57 hours after the first transmission. The Krell fleet was already there, surrounding the archive like a cage of metal and fire. Zeph watched the small human vessel appear on his sensors. It was so tiny compared to the Krell warships. So insignificant. That's it? Vel asked. One ship? How is that supposed to help us? Zeph didn't answer. He was reading the energy signatures coming from the human vessel. Or rather, he was trying to. There was something wrong with the readings. The ship registered on sensors, but the life forms inside it didn't. It was as if 300 living beings had somehow made themselves invisible to every detection method the archive possessed. They're not here to fight, Zeph said slowly. Then what are they doing? Before he could answer, the human ship's cargo bay opened. 300 figures dropped into space, moving toward the Krell fleet in complete silence. They wore suits that seemed to absorb light. They carried weapons that Zeph's sensors couldn't identify. They moved with a precision that suggested thousands of hours of practice. And they felt like nothing. Empty spaces in the universe where life should be but wasn't. Zeph understood then what humans had learned during their 100,000 years of war. They had learned how to become ghosts. How to empty themselves of everything that made them detectable, everything that made them human. How to become death itself. What have I done? He whispered. The first Krell died 17 minutes later. It happened on the flagship, in a corridor that was supposed to be secure. One moment, the Krell warrior was alive, patrolling with absolute confidence. The next moment, it simply wasn't. No alarm. No struggle. No sign of what had killed it. Just empty armor crumpling to the floor. And carved into the wall beside it, a message in the Krell language. We are coming. When gods learned to pray. The first night. Lord Commander Vask had ruled the Krell invasion fleet for 3,000 years. He had conquered worlds beyond counting. He had faced every weapon, every strategy, every desperate defense that civilizations could create. But he had never experienced anything like this. The deaths were random. A warrior would disappear from a patrol. A technician would be found in a sealed room, killed by something that left no trace. Officers would gather for strategy meetings and realize one of their number was missing, their body discovered later in impossible locations. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. Security scans detected nothing. Psychic sweeps found no trace of hostile intent. The ship's artificial intelligences reported no unauthorized entries. Yet the Krell kept dying. How many? Vask demanded. 217 confirmed deaths, my lord, his second-in-command replied. And that's only in the past 12 hours. From how many attackers? Unknown. We have not captured or even seen any of them. We only find the bodies they leave behind. Vask's metal form shifted with agitation. 217 warriors killed by enemies that couldn't be detected. It was impossible. The Krell were the apex predators of the universe. They had technology that could see through solid matter, sense thoughts across light years, detect the smallest heat signature. But the humans weren't showing up on any of it. The psychology of predation. Colonel Vance moved through the Krell flagship like smoke through air. She had been operating in enemy territory for 16 hours now, and she had not stopped moving. She had killed 12 targets herself. Clean kills, efficient, designed to create maximum psychological impact with minimum noise. Each body was left in a location that would be discovered by multiple Krell, each positioned to create maximum horror. This was not war. This was theater. Humans had learned long ago that killing the enemy's body was only half the battle. The real victory came from killing their mind, their will, their confidence. From making them afraid of the dark, afraid of being alone, afraid of the next breath they took. The Krell thought they understood fear because they had created it in others. But they had never experienced it themselves. They didn't know that fear wasn't just an emotion, it was a virus that spread through minds, corrupting confidence, destroying certainty. Vance's team was spreading that virus throughout the entire Krell fleet. The pattern emerges. By the third day, Vask began to see the pattern. The humans weren't killing randomly. They were targeting specific individuals, high-ranking officers, experienced warriors, anyone who showed leadership qualities or tactical skill. They were decapitating the fleet's command structure one body at a time. Seal all commanders in their quarters, Vask ordered. Guards outside every door. No one moves alone. No one. The order went out across the fleet. Millions of Krell warriors locked themselves in their rooms, huddled behind security doors, surrounded by guards. They felt safe. They were wrong. Commander Thex was in his sealed quarters, surrounded by 8 guards, when he died. The guards heard a soft sound, turned to check, and found their commander lying on the floor with a blade through his heart. The killer was already gone. How they had entered was impossible to determine. The room had been sealed from the inside. The guards had been watching the only door. There were no vents, no hidden passages, no way in or out. Yet Thex was dead, and on the wall above his body, written in his own blood. Nowhere is safe. The breaking point. Lord Commander Vask stared at the message. He had existed for 30,000 years. He had built an empire that spanned 12 galaxies. He had made entire civilizations kneel with a single command. And now he was afraid. The emotion was alien to him. The Krell did not fear. They caused fear. They fed on the terror of lesser species. But now, something had changed. Now they were the ones looking over their shoulders, jumping at shadows, wondering if each breath would be their last. "Pull back," Vask said quietly. "My lord?" His second-in-command couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Pull back from the archive. Retreat to defensive positions. But we outnumber them millions to one. We have the most advanced weapons in the universe. We cannot be defeated by 300 primitives." Vask turned to face his subordinate. His glowing eyes, which had struck fear into countless species, now held something else. Something that looked disturbingly like terror. "They are not primitives," he said. "They are something else. Something we have never encountered before." "What could they possibly be that makes you order a retreat?" "Evolution," Vask replied. "We evolved on a peaceful world. We gained our power through technology, through conquest of weaker species. But these humans, they evolved on a death world. They spent 100,000 years killing each other, perfecting the art of murder, learning to hunt the most dangerous prey in their galaxy, themselves." He gestured at the displays showing the death toll. "We became predators by conquering the weak. They became predators by surviving the strong. We learned to create fear. They learned to be fear. The hunt intensifies." Colonel Vance received the order to escalate at hour 72. The Krell were pulling back, trying to form defensive positions. That couldn't be allowed. The enemy needed to run, not regroup. "Phase 2, she told her team. "Make it personal." Phase 2 was different. Phase 1 had been about creating fear through random death. Phase 2 was about making each Krell warrior understand that they, specifically, were being hunted. Lieutenant Marcus Cole specialized in this. He would identify a target, a specific Krell warrior, and follow them for hours. Not attacking. Just following. Leaving small signs that he was there. A moved object in their quarters. A message carved where only they would see it. Their name written on walls they passed. The psychological effect was devastating. Krell warriors began to crack, to report being followed by ghosts they couldn't see. Some refused to leave their quarters. Others attacked their own comrades, convinced everyone around them was an enemy infiltrator. The fleet began to collapse from within. The message. On day 5, Lord Commander Vask received a communication. It appeared on his private channel, encrypted with methods the Krell thought were unbreakable. A human face appeared on the screen. A woman with gray hair and tired eyes. "Lord Commander Vask," Admiral Chen said. "I am sending this message to explain what is happening to your fleet." Vask said nothing, his metal form perfectly still. "Your species has conquered 12 galaxies," Chen continued. "You believe this makes you powerful. You believe fear is your weapon. But you have never truly understood what fear is." She leaned forward. "Fear is not something you create in others. Fear is what happens when you realize you are not the hunter anymore. When you understand that something deadlier than you exists. When you know that all your power, all your technology, all your strength means nothing against an enemy that has learned to survive by becoming something worse than death." "We are the Krell," Vask said, his voice steady despite everything. "We do not surrender. We do not negotiate. We conquer or we die." "Then you die," Chen replied simply. "Because we gave you a chance. We offered you the opportunity to leave. To retreat back to your own galaxies and never return. But you chose to stay." She stood. "So now you get to learn what happens when you push humanity too far. When you threaten something we've decided to protect. You get to experience what our ancestors experienced for 100,000 years, being hunted by the most dangerous predators their world ever created." The screen flickered. "My teams have been holding back, Lord Commander. They've been trying to give you time to make the right choice. But that time is over. Protocol Nightmare is now fully active." "What does that mean?" Chen's smile was cold and final. "It means no more mercy. No more warning shots. No more chances to retreat. It means my people are going to do what they were trained to do, eliminate every single threat to the archive and everyone protecting it. We are millions. They are 300. Numbers don't matter when the enemy can't find you. Can't stop you. Can't even see you coming. Chen's eyes were hard as steel. Your warriors have killed billions. They think they understand death. But my teams have studied death for 1,000 generations. They've perfected it. Made it into an art form. She leaned close to the camera. You wanted to fight gods, Lord Commander. But gods are myths. We're something much worse. We're the nightmares that even nightmares fear. The transmission ended. The exodus. 12 hours later, the Krell fleet began its withdrawal. Not a tactical retreat, a full rout. Ships fled in every direction, desperate to escape the archive and the invisible killers that haunted their vessels. The humans let them go. They had made their point. Of the millions of Krell warriors who had attacked the archive, 73,000 never made it home. They died in the darkness of their own ships, killed by enemies they never saw, never heard, never even suspected were there until the moment the blade found them. The survivors carried stories back to Krell space. Tales of human ghosts that moved through solid walls. Of warriors who could make themselves invisible to every sense. Of death that came without warning and left only bodies and messages carved in blood. The Krell Empire, which had conquered 12 galaxies, never ventured into human space again. The aftermath. Zeph met with Colonel Vance before the human team departed. Thank you, the archivist said. You saved us from extinction. Vance's expression didn't change. We did what was necessary. What you did was horrifying. The Krell will never recover from this psychological trauma. Good. Maybe next time they'll think twice before attacking peaceful civilizations. But at what cost? You've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Every species will fear you now. Vance considered this for a moment. Fear keeps people honest, she said finally. It keeps them careful. It reminds them that no matter how powerful they think they are, there's always something more dangerous. Something they shouldn't push. Is that truly how you want to be remembered? As the species that became more terrifying than the monsters? Vance looked at the stars beyond the archive's walls. We spent 100,000 years learning how to survive on a planet that wanted us dead. We fought predators, diseases, each other. We learned every possible way to kill, to hunt, to endure. And then we looked at all that darkness inside us and decided to use it for something other than destroying ourselves. She turned back to Zeph. The Krell chose conquest. The Veldari chose domination. The hive mind chose assimilation. We chose survival. And if that means becoming the nightmare that keeps the monsters in check, then that's what we'll be. You don't regret what you've done? Regret is a luxury for people who have other options. Vance's voice was quiet but firm. We did what needed to be done. We protected those who couldn't protect themselves. And yes, we used methods that civilized species find horrifying. But civilization is a luxury you only get to enjoy because someone else is willing to do the horrible things necessary to protect it. She walked toward her ship. Record that in your archive, Zeph. Let every species know, humanity will be your friend, your ally, your defender. But push us too far, threaten what we protect, and you'll discover why we're the only species in the galaxy that named death itself and made it afraid. The human ship departed silently, carrying its cargo of ghosts back to Earth. In the archive, Zeph updated the human files with new information. He added warnings, classifications, psychological profiles. And at the very top of the entry, in letters that would be visible to any species that accessed it, he wrote: Warning, do not engage. Recommended response to human aggression, immediate surrender. Reason, they have been practicing for 100,000 years. The galaxy took notice. The Krell's defeat spread through 1,000 worlds. Species that had never heard of humans before suddenly knew their name. And in the darkness between stars, in hidden places where warriors trained and nations planned, every civilization added a new rule to their strategic doctrines. never threaten humanity. Because they had learned something the Krell discovered too late: humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to survive. And a species that spent 100,000 years learning to survive would do absolutely anything to keep surviving. Even become the monsters that made gods retreat.